Hey guys, Chris here. Tonight we have a story about a hunter who goes to southwestern Arkansas in a swamp in the middle of the night, and there he has the most frightening experience and moment of his entire life that changes him and alters his life. That's next. Okay, so I am in the base camp backyard. I got the gas fireplace going here. I like it. It's nice and cozy and warm, and it's a little cool and breezy, but not too bad. So for tonight's beer, we have, it's called from the Brewer's Cabinet, Dirty Wookie Imperial Brown Ale. 12 ounces, 7.1 ABV, and this is a pretty interesting beer. It says the Dirty Wookie Imperial Brown features a silky smooth texture, chocolate, malt notes, and stellar hops balance this beer. A brewer staff and taproom favorite for good reason. So we're going to find out what that tastes like. And that is the Wookie. That's my Wookie. It says Imperial Brown Ale too, so. Oh, very, almost looks like Coca-Cola. It's dark but transparent. I'm going to take it right out of the cup for this one. Not too sudsy. It almost looks like a root beer even. Wow. I can taste a malty, mocha, almost chocolatey flavor. Just a light bitterness at the end, kind of a little tinge of bitterness on the finish. And then it's got this kind of a dry bitterness taste. I don't know if I like that. It's very bitter, but it's starting to go away. But it goes down really smoothly. Yeah, that is really interesting. Yeah, Brewer's Cabinet out of Reno, Nevada. So there you go. Cheers. Our story takes place in 2000. That's 25 years ago. Bobby was living just outside of Texarkana, Texas. And Texarkana is in northeast Texas. And Bobby was living there, and he loved to go hunting. He loved to go coon hunting. Now, for those of you that don't like hunting, there are no raccoons killed, maimed, or hurt in this video, or I even talk about it. It's all about Bobby's really frightening experience. Just wanted to throw that out there. And Bobby was living in this community, and what he would do is he would take his Walker hounds with his friends, his companions as he called them, and they would go into these swamps in the middle of the night and go hunting. Just crazy. That alone right there is just like a setup for a scary story. And so they would go to, in this particular time, they went to southwest Arkansas, Miller County, and they were just south of Fouke, Arkansas, which is the small town where in 1972, the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek came out. It was referencing this community. And Boggy Creek, it's an actual creek. It's south, just slightly west of Fouke, Arkansas. And this is where they were going to go do their coon hunt in this, what they called the Red River, Sulphur River Corridor, also part of the Sulphur River WMA Wildlife Management Area, 16,000 acres plus of this very heavily wooded, marshy, swampy rivers, creeks in this very inhospitable place, just thick and brackish water and just very intense place to travel through. So in February of 2000, Bobby and two of his friends, he called them companions, went to this Miller County in southwest Arkansas, and they went to this Sulphur River Corridor swamp to do their hunt. And they do this at night. They got to the swamp And what they do, I learned this, I don't know anything about coon hunting, but there's two ways of going about coon hunting. One of them is you go and actually tree the raccoon, and then you kill it and harvest it for its pelt. The other is the dogs will tree it, and then you spot it, just make sure it's in the tree, and then you release it unharmed. And I believe this is what Bobby was doing, him and his friends, because he made no mention of killing raccoons. So they're in the swamp with their dogs. He's got his two friends, and I believe they had the flashlights in their pockets. I don't know how they were handling all this with the dogs on the leashes and the flashlights, but they're in this swamp, and the swamp has got water. It's flooded timbers, what they called it, and it's 8 to 15 inches deep of water. And I don't know how that works. If you hit like a depression and all of a sudden you're up to your waist, I don't know. But they're in this water, middle of the night, after midnight, hunting around for raccoons. And suddenly his friend's dogs sense a raccoon off in this direction, off to the east. And his two buddies took off with the dogs that way. And a moment later, his dogs sensed something the opposite direction. He unleashed the dogs, and they took off, and they went after, apparently, this raccoon. And he took his flashlight, and he followed them, and they took off, and they treed a raccoon. They were around the base of this big old tree, and he gets to this tree, and he shines the light up, and he sees the raccoon, and he said everything was all right. So he must have just spotted it and got the dogs leashed up, and he decided to head back and catch up with his friends, and he could hear, this is what he said, he could hear off in the distance, he could barely hear the dogs barking. I don't know what that means, if that was a quarter of a mile, a half a mile. It sounded like a long ways away to barely hear dogs barking. And so he's heading through this swamp, 8 to 15 inches of water. He's slogging through the swamp with the dogs on the leash, and he hears behind him, and off in the darkness, someone or something walking. And you can hear this splash, 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 like that. He assumes it's one of his friends. So he stops with the dogs, calls out, says, "Hey, I'm over here." And to his dismay, he doesn't hear anything back. He hears nothing. And right at that time, the dogs started cowering around his legs and whimpering. And these dogs were not known to cower and whimper like this. This was very unexpected for these dogs. And these Walker breeds are very tough dogs. And so he was really confused by this. He paused and listened into the darkness. It was dead quiet. And then he heard this deep-throated, low growl. Not really loud, but it just had this bass to it. It sounded large. Really startled him. The dogs continued to whimper, and he turned and kept moving towards the sound of his friend's dogs way off in the distance. Very frightening moment. He's walking along in the water. He can hear his own feet splashing and the dog splashing, and it now appears to be quiet. He can't hear any more of this sound that was behind him. So he's kind of relieved. He continues on. He's making good progress. And then over the sound of his own slogging through the water with the dogs, he hears this walking, splashing sound again, off in the darkness. The dogs are still whimpering. He stops. He reaches and pulls his floodlight up, and he turns and he shines it. And right behind him, maybe 10, 15 feet, he sees this immense creature on 2 feet, 8 to 9 feet tall. this dark brown, almost reddish brown, like pine needles, dead pine needles, standing there. And he's shining this light, and it hits the eyes of this thing, and it reflects like a deer. The hair in the back of his neck goes up, and he said it was the most frightening moment of his life. He's never felt fear like that before. This thing was completely wet, dripping with water, and this long hair on it, and it made this hissing sound directly at him, kind of like totally chilling. At this moment, the dogs went ballistic. They became emboldened. I don't know if it was like more information is powerful, because now they could actually see it. And they were at the end of the leash barking and going crazy, and he was holding them back with all of his might. They were chomping at the leash, is what he said. And this thing was standing there, and it reached down into the water with this very long gray hand, this palm that was super long and these long fingers, and it reached into the water and it splashed water right onto Bobby's chest and face. 3 times it splashed like that, and the dogs were going crazy, and right at that moment he knew he had to get out of there, so he took the dogs and he turned them and was able to, and I don't know if he had them trained like a horse, you turn it to the left and it goes to the left. And they turned, and he took off into the darkness with the dogs leading the way. And he realized after about 1.5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, he was heading in the wrong direction. Just totally terrified. He gets to this big cypress tree, and he stops to catch his breath because he's running in this water. And this thing is no longer following him directly, and he pauses by this cypress tree, and he listens, and the dogs are quiet, and he can hear again off in the distance, maybe 50 yards away, this splashing kind of coming towards him. And he turns and he moves out away from this tree, and he decides to head back towards the truck. He wants to just get out of there. Forget his friends at this moment. He wants to get back to the truck. And then as he's walking through the swamp, it's quiet again, and he hears this low moaning sound echoing through the swamp. And it just kind of fades out. And he didn't hear anything else. He continued on heading towards his truck, and I don't know how you find your way around a swamp at night. It's just nothing but water and trees. I can't imagine how you would navigate that, but he knew what he was doing. He said he got to this knoll, this hill. He came up this hill and was coming down the other side to get back into the water to make his last stretch towards the truck. And at the top of this knoll, he saw this humongous footprint in the soft dirt up there, 22 inches long, and this thing had 4 toes on it. 4 toes, really weird. And it was a human-like footprint, just massive. He comes down the other side of this hill, and he's back in this water, 10, 12 inches deep, and he navigates his way back up on shore to his truck. And again, I don't know how you do that at night. I don't care if you got a flashlight or not. It's pretty confusing. And you guys know I've hiked around the forest at night, the wilderness at night with a flashlight, and it can turn on you really quick because it all starts looking alike because you can't see very far. Your window of opportunity to see is very limited. He gets to the truck, opens it up, gets the dogs in the back of the truck, and I'm assuming he had some waders on or something, and he got those off, and he waited for his friends. They eventually show up. He doesn't say a word to them about what he experienced. He was afraid they would make fun of him, embarrass him, call him a liar. He had no evidence. And so he kept his mouth shut. So for a long time after that night, he didn't mention it to anybody. And he finally mentioned it to an old coon hunter from Doddridge, Arkansas. Must have been an old friend or something. And he said this guy is long gone, dead and buried. And this guy said, don't ever tell anybody because they'll all think you're a liar and they'll embarrass you. And it's kind of this maybe older school thinking, because personally, obviously, I don't care what people think about what I believe about Bigfoot. And many of you have had the same thing where you're like, you know what? I know what I saw, and I saw what I know, and all that. And so you don't care. But he kept it to himself, and he said he had nightmares about it. And I can imagine you would have nightmares about something that was pursuing you in the middle of the night in a swamp. And so this is what he had to say about what he actually saw. He said the face was also a grayish color, and he's referring to the hands were gray with these huge monkey-like hands, and then the face was also this grayish-like color with no or very little hair on it. The hair appeared to be slicked back because the animal appeared wet overall. And the overall coloration was this dark rusty brown or similar, but a little darker than pine needles after they have fallen on the ground and turned color. Bobby also said he saw a flash of teeth and they appeared human but much larger. And then Bobby said what haunted him was the face because he described it as being like that of a person. So seeing this large, monstrous being and then had this human-like face. How frightening. He also said at the end, he stated that he has never been as frightened as he was that night in the Sulphur River bottoms. And so that is our story from southwestern Arkansas about Bobby, and really a frightening experience. So just at night, and so it probably should give me cause for pause with my hiking around the wilderness at night. And sometimes, you know, it's pretty much necessity. I'm out there doing my story, and I was like, oh, I got to get back to the truck. Just like Bobby, I got to get back to my truck. But I don't have coon dogs with me to help me out. I just got me and my light, my backpack. So yeah, I gotta be careful. Gotta time these things a little bit better. So I appreciate you guys that do watch out for me and are concerned about me. So yeah, I do appreciate that. So all right, you guys, thank you for watching, and really looking forward to spring and then summer coming up. I got a lot of things planned. I got a really good next video about a military base, the largest military base in the United States, and it's in Washington, and there's a series of activity related to Bigfoot in and around this military base with military personnel. So we're going to be doing that one next. It'll be pretty wild. So, all right, you guys, if you guys like stories about the strange, unexplained, and things that go bump in the night, please like and subscribe. You guys always know how to do that. And I appreciate you guys and all your comments and everything else. So thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. As always, keep hiking.